Thank y'all for coming on a beautiful Saturday. It's really hard to get people out. Elizabeth and I met in 2001 and we worked together for 25 years, quarter of a century. Elizabeth received her doctorate through the Fine Arts Society here in New York, Fine Arts Institute, and has traveled extensively in China, and she's very well respected and famous in China, more famous because of all of her research. And we have a wonderful book where she has deciphered this very unusual glyph for the Shang period. So, without much ado, she needs no introduction, but we have done 10 catalogs together. Only 10. And she also single-handedly, with Gufang, pushing Gufang along to do the Jade Age, which shows all the jades that are discovered that are in American museums. It was quite an undertaking, but she did a great job.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Spencer. Is this working? Does it sound like it's working? Okay. No, thanks very much. And yeah, the Institute of Fine Arts. Well, we have been working together since 2001. Maybe it's 2000 anyway. A while, and with pleasure. But I have to admit that Spencer helped us publish the Jade Age volume that has all the American early, late Neolithic Jade Age jades in it. And so he was very instrumental in getting that out, and we're probably going to get another version out if we can do it. But anyway, today I'm going to introduce, I would like to speak about, as the title suggests, Metamorphic and Aesthetic Domination of the Human in Early Chinese Art. It's not the human that we recognize each other as, it's the semi-human divinity that characterizes the only sort of partially human image in Jade Age and early Bronze Age art. That means from the Liangzhu, Longshan, Hongshan, into the Arlito or Sha Shangzhou period. The semi-human divinity dominated. We'll take a very close look at it. And my point in introducing these particular images now is to show you that in Bronze Age ritual art, this particular image of the mask with some sort of horns and legs ending in claws is the same as that image, and it's the same as this image that is part of this particular jade, which is one of my favorites in the exhibit. It's really, it's so colorful and so lyrical. So next, if we can have the next one, thank you. I wanted to start out by introducing what Ai Weiwei said, because he's probably everybody has heard of him, the celebrated and outspoken artist of contemporary China. He commented on his particular ancient Chinese jade collection. I never realized he had this collection, but he does. And I think the most important thing is, I'll just read the whole thing because I think it's important, and I'll get back to it. As an exceptional cultural imprint predating the onset of script, whether from these particular cultures, jade stands as evidence of early human language and civilization. Without doubt, okay? Ritual offerings and the reverence paid to deities intertwined with power, identity, faith, affluence, came to embody intuitive spiritual dimensions of our early world, China transmuted through an enduring civilization. I mean, jade is this human language. So within this framework, the imaginings of ancestors, the introspective contemplation of life and death, and the exploration of the ethereal existence beyond earthly existence and interlace and pervade early civilizations, unmistakable and long-lasting. Without question, I mean, I think that's one of the most elegant statements about early jade and its role in early China, and it continued to have an outstanding role in the rest of China. Next, please. And so what I just want to point out is this is a book that John Major and I have recently published. The understanding of Ai Weiwei is very clear. The understanding of many early Chinese specialists and art historians, the misunderstanding of them is pervasive, and I'm not going to name them. They're named in my article that will appear in Spencer's catalog eventually on this particular Jade exhibit. But it's pervasive. Jade is evidence of early human language and civilization. So in what I have demonstrated in this particular book, and many times over, is the language at this particular time, the early human language that Ai Weiwei so eloquently stated, is the emphasis upon the language of spirit metamorphosis. That means change from this life into a divine, into a divinity, a spirit. Is the emphasis upon the language of spirit metamorphosis present in post-late Neolithic, post-Neolithic Shang time, and clearly traceable to all the early Jade Age cultures. This emphasis on, or this language of spirit metamorphosis. And I explain it ad nauseum in this particular little book. That's a very thin one, but for me, one of my most important. Next. So anyway, I'll try and just summarize all this and not read through it, but what is the meaning of this semi-human image so prevalent on early Jades? Many authors have used the term shamanic or shaman to explicate the role of chiefs, rulers, kings of late Neolithic rulers of late Neolithic through kings of Shang and Zhou time. Yet not one demonstrates, not one, why this term is appropriate. Not one. Reliance instead is on anthropological hypotheses from disciplines outside of Chinese origin. Their arguments lack concrete evidence for shamanism, shamans, or shamanic imagery. This is the case with, as I said, many archaeologists and art historians in and outside of China. Concrete evidence for this belief in spirit metamorphosis is, as we'll point out, based on script of Shang times, Shang divinations, and based on other proof for this is the written divinations and the purpose, as well as the use of certain terms in those inscriptions, as well as types of tropes used to represent imagery. So anyway, and today what I am going to look at is what is represented in this exhibit, the Western Zhou Jades, in this March of 2026. So what these Zhou images have in common with the rest of Neolithic as well as Shang is formal artistic properties that are based on what is present in contemporary writing concerning the belief in spirit metamorphosis. Next, please. So to review, based on written evidence from bone inscriptions, it is maintained, there are two primary forms of evidence for this religious belief, the foundation of Chinese thinking, the foundation of Chinese ideology. To review, based on written evidence from bone inscriptions, it's maintained that terms such as "yi," which is right here, and "bin," as in interlace, but it's a different meaning in Shang times, they substantiate the belief in metamorphic power of the Shang ruler. So in Shang bone inscriptions, and this comes from my book, this particular book on "yi," right here, "bin" is always a verb, and the king, living or dead, and "di" or God are its only subjects. The object of the king's binning is always a spirit, not a living human seeking an entertainment of a human guest, but rather a living or dead king, seeking the dead royal ancestor or deed. There are other terms, which I won't go into, but these are other terms that appear to have a sacred spirit-based meaning, frequently used by the king in these oracle divinations. So they're all intimately connected with the king's paramount power role as spirit interlocutor. To receive means that the spirit of Di descends into or for the king. The king was considered divine, clearly. Next, please. And these, Bin refers to spirit empowerment, specifically the empowerment of the Shang King. The verb E also in both inscriptions makes this reference. Okay, so E is governed by the same subject and object of to invoke a spirit. These are other terms which we don't have time to go into. But these are representative inscriptions of the type of concerns of the Shang King and Oracle of Divinations. In this particular case, the inscription is cut off. Translated means, if D spirit empowers E, if D, will D descend or sit down in Amen under some city, the capital of Dai Shang. Another example about hunting. If the king on day so-and-so does not go field hunting, will it rain? If the king undergoes spirit empowerment E and goes field hunting, will there be no great rain? You know, there's a positive and negative in divinations. It's either will it happen or won't it happen. And in this case, you can see that spirit empowerment goes hand in hand with the purpose of divinations. Can I have the next one? Oh, wait. The most important inscription, though, from my point of view, that I wrote about much earlier in my professional life is crack making on this particular day. Bin is the name of the divine or divine. If Father E, the 26th Shang King, undergoes spirit empowerment, lest will he bestow the E ding on the king? Will Father E not bestow the ding, the tetrapod, this big bronze, on the king? So can I have the next, please? So in these inscriptions, this is the term, the E ding, and this is another example, but this is the one I just translated. This is important, because what these spirits are doing is they are empowering the king with the power of the royal bronze ding. The biggest and most important ding, ritual vessel in Shang times, is the tetrapod, the four-legged ding. Anyway, so this is pretty strict evidence, straightforward evidence of spirit empowerment through this powerful bronze that's used in ancestor sacrifices, the tetrapod ding in this particular case. And also E appears here as a binomial with the graph for the ding in Oracle bone inscriptions. And here it's about will, it was divine, will the new spirit E be used to invoke some ancestor spirit? So you can see that the ritual vessels, what sort of relationship they have to the divine divinity, divine king. Next, please. Oh, look at these are the variations of the E graph in Oracle bone inscriptions. And you can see some are a little bit more elaborate than others, such as this one and this one. And they appear in inscriptions without a context, so it's difficult to interpret them exactly like all the others, but it's likely it is because the hands are raised and the feet are in the image of bird claws. Again, this image of E as it's drawn, and this as well in one over in the corner. So, next please. So the modes of representation, I talked about the inscriptional evidence of all these different birds, primarily E, which means to spiritually empower or empower spiritually, undergo this change from this to the spirit realm. And I analyzed this in 1998, 2002, and one I pointed out at that point, the 2002 catalog that Throckmorton Spencer specifically had me write for him. I discussed this fetal pose, and that is one of the ways that this sort of semi-human divinity is represented in early Chinese art, whether it's jade or ceramic even, or bronze, or ivory, or shell. The fetal pose is one major early Chinese artistic convention used to convey spirit rebirth. You know, the fetus is something that eventually will give birth. So it's a convention like other means of representation in Shang bronze imagery and Western Zhou and pre-Shang late Jade Age. There are several other different conventions which we don't have time to go into, such as the displayed body, which is like this, and which we've seen, and the cicada. The cicada is an extension of the mask on bronzes very frequently, or on jade carvings and ivory carvings. So the cicada body extension, the animal mask, the devouring mode. You know, there's a tiger who acts as if he's devouring a human being that's very well known to specialists in Bronze Age vessel types. And there's an interchangeability between abstract and real animal or abbreviated and whole animal images. But there is an interchange, but they mean the same thing. So fetal refers, as I've said, to the characteristics of a fetus, a position with the back curved forward and the limbs folded in front of the body like this. And this we published in several of our books before. This is the earliest graph for dragon as it appears in Hongshan culture. Oh, there we go. Zhou, next please. So these are the metamorphic images I'm talking about that I will turn to some jades in a minute. This one is very well known from the Liangzhu culture, which displays a semi-human on top of an animal-type mask, and with a typical sort of fetal position of the legs pulled in and the arms drawn under, but also related to imagery that now has been discovered at Arlington Sha site, and of course the graph as we saw it, and of course this is the mode. The convention used here is the display mode, as in the character in the graph E, and the vessel where from the Museum of Far Eastern Art. Next, please. So this is just to show you how absolutely consistent the image, the fetal position of this semi-human divinity is. I mean, from here, which is Liangzhu, late Neolithic, to early Shang, Shingan, to middle Shang, here's the image, and with his feet drawn up like this, same as this one. Okay, next please. And on two Western Zhou bronzes, you can see this fetal image is displayed in wonderful detail. I mean, sort of rhythmical, like the Chinese typical style that favors calligraphic flourish. And so here is you can see the hair of these semi-human, ears, eyes, semi-human features, and then this fetal position. And legs drawn up and ending in bird claws, obviously signifying flight, spirit flight. And the same over here, with a human and his arms folded in and legs in this fetal position. A remarkable image. So the subject matter of Jade Age cultures and the Bronze Age cultures is not narrative in the sense of Han period art, which is narrative pictorial art, with a human involved in cooking in the kitchen or playing mahjong, but spirit-based in the sense of Ai Weiwei, what Ai Weiwei called an early human language before the entry of script. The same tropes of metamorphic representation continue. The semi-human varies stylistically, but not in type, which is so interesting. May I have the next, please? The human face can be either remarkably human-like, or it can be remarkably weird, or it can take the shape of a bird sometimes, in other images. But it does always have this fetal shape with the legs drawn under like this, and sometimes with its body decorated by a dragon, another symbol of divinity. But then here you see this wonderful character. And again, in a sort of different form, and here identified by the feng bird, or in context, or with a dragon, and sometimes a tiger. Now, four of the images here in the exhibit can be directly compared to excavated examples from Western Zhou sites, as described here. So, sometimes a zoomorphic figure may simply be crowned by a feng bird or lung dragon in profile, but the interchangeability of feng, lung dragon, and semi-human share the same sort of symbolism of human transformation into divinity. Next, please. Some more images showing you the variation that these jade images can take with human or bird and sometimes dragon facial imagery, and the same with the body imagery, but always the fetal position, and usually with the feet ending in claws, or the hands, the fingers ending in claws. Okay, next please. So other remarkable pieces are this one. Can you see this? I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's right back here. And I'd pick it up and show you, but I'm not allowed to. But aesthetically stunning. This is just one of my favorite pieces, and I understand has been acquired. Can you see his hair here, as if blown by the wind? I mean, the style is typically Chinese in being very calligraphically linear, but with movement suggested by this strand of hair just stuck out in thin air. And with the eye, of course, and ear of the semi-human, the nose, the mouth, and here's his hands end in bird claws, and so do his feet end in bird claws. Again, and with the feng bird at the bottom. I don't have the other side, but it's identical in terms of being exquisitely calligraphic and full of movement, and just typical of sort of the raised double outlined forms that were used by master craftsmen. You have the next one, please. And this is another one that is one of my favorites. The back and the front version of this so-called sheet or knot opener. And you can see the interpretations are slightly different, but they all emphasize, the human head with hair, and usually with striated hair like this, and the human-like face with his nose, sometimes a mouth, eye, and in the fetal position, with feet ending in bird claws. So that's on exhibit, and it typically is Western Zhou, and to a certain degree Lei Chang with this double outline for all the different parts of the bodies. It's two-dimensional, it's always two-dimensional. And next, please. And finally, I just want to point out that this type of imagery of semi-human divinity, which will later be incorporated into Wuism or shamanism later, written in Han times, loses its specificity in terms of on this bird image, for example. It isn't a semi-human in totality. Its parts are broken up. It has a face-like profile and hair, but hair also continues here, and it's got a totally bird body and ending in claws, and you can't really see the fetal pose. There's another jade which is really gorgeous in the exhibit here, showing you how degenerate parts well, parts of the body of the human or the bird or the dragon are picked out and but not forming part of a whole image. For example, you can see the eye of the human here, and maybe his arms turned in, and some of the fetal positions suggested there. But these two show how eventually the imagery of the semi-human divinity, which could be the king or any of these ancestors, starts to degenerate. So, you have the next slide, please. I'd just like to emphasize, so why did the early Chinese of pre-Qin time represent the human primarily and only in semi-human metamorphic guise? This is how my interpretation, and I think it will stand up with time. Belief in the livelihood of the early Chinese centered on worship of the supernaturally powerful and on the belief in a divine ruler. As analyzed, Jade was revered in itself a ritually sanctified medium for representing divinity. Although styles varied from one period to the other, the persistence of the semi-human with bird and often dragon attributes in a flat two-dimensional context, whether on a bronze or on a jade, rather than the living human, male or female, in art illustrates the strength of traditional reverence for the greater world of nature embraced by an all-encompassing spirit world. So working Hearthstone in large part into abraded linear images not only astonishes but underscores how by the end of the Zhou period, a belief in metamorphic spirit power continued to dominate daily life and survival. Jade was material with magic properties that serves as an everlasting gift in revealing the foundation of the Chinese mind. Thank you. Next one. Thank you. I will read it. Questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I think is interesting about the exhibit is showing sort of how the visual language changes between these two periods, but I wonder where you think it counts for the fact that, you know, as it goes into these later, you know, spring, autumn, warm states periods, what happens to the human figure? It's almost completely gone.
No, pictorial narratives begin to appear, first with really Zhou art, and then with Western Han, and then all throughout the Han, this pictorial image. And this semi-human does continue to appear in later times, but it's continued, it really is, this whole belief system is the beginning of Taoism. And it actually is related to Wu, or shamanic-like worship, where they had exorcistic rituals. And that continued well throughout the historic periods. I mean, during the Han, the Han emperors depended upon shamans, Wu people to speak their language. So it did continue, and the imagery did continue into, Jade continued throughout, Chinese tradition. But this sort of semi-human divinity is changes in the Shang into a mask with the animal in this displayed position, takes over, and that continues throughout the Western Zhou and into the spring and autumn period. And in Zhou art during the Han, but that's a whole other topic. But it's something that continues to focus on spirit worship. Okay?
Yeah.
No questions? What? Do you have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay. Nobody from Mesoamerica? Yeah?
How is it that Jade came to have such a magical power for them?
They discovered it way back when. I mean, they discovered it in, almost now maybe 9,000 years ago, and it just came to represent luminosity, divinity. It was treasure. It was just treasure. as a miraculous stone, when it's so obdurate, you know, you can't just carve it. You have to use a hard stone to abrade it. And I think the difficulty of not only working the stone and its magical properties of luminosity, translucency, are, you know, are all important. And that's why it was favored by the early Chinese, because it immediately identified as sort of a spirit-embedded stone. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And so, the first main thing they did was a semi-human.
Yeah,
Person.
you don't get a representation of it. I mean, actually, there are a few jades showing, in the Shang period, showing humans, but it's not as a human divinity. This is the most prevalent type of representation in art. I mean, the human, I can't deny the human is represented in small scale jade imageries and stone, and dressed in a sort of a servile outfit, never the case so far that we know or recognize. It's not really until pictorial imagery, you know, in everyday life is represented in art and you know, and religious and imperial portrait images of Tang and post-Tang periods. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, I have the Liang Zhou jades.
Cool.
How does that relate, say, to the birds from the Han period?
Wait, say that again? You have your Lanzhou jade, and how do the birds relate to what?
The birds came first. The jade birds from the Han period.
Oh, from the Hongshan?
Yeah.
Well, you know, that it's really fun to figure what's going on. You know, Hongshan had an impact, you know, on what was going on in, to a certain extent, more with Linxiatang, which is just north of where Liangzhu was located. And the birds are represented.
Part of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, there's such different styles. I mean, Hongshan and Liangzhu, but there is a sort of commonality in terms of spirit belief. Yeah, yeah. And the, you know, the Hongshan style sort of degenerated in terms of being emphatically sculptural in expression by comparison to Liangzhu and Longshan. Not necessarily, well, yeah, that are much more Chinese in terms of calligraphic emphasis, linear and full of movement, not emphasized through anthropomorphic, you know, sculptural form. Yeah.
I've recently learned that originally I thought all of the jades were burial pieces, but I've since learned that some of the pieces were kept in families and sometimes carved later. You know, Neolithic pieces would be recarved later. Is there a difference between pieces that were designated for burial as opposed to pieces that were designated to be
Well, that's a
kept
good
in the
question.
family?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have a lot of habitation remains.
You probably can ditch that microphone.
Yeah, okay, so
It makes a horrible little noise.
it does.
And the room is small.
And I don't know where to put it, okay. Sorry. So we don't have a lot of habitation remains that show the remains of Jade in a kitchen or something like that, or in a living room. I mean, most of them come from burials. In fact, you know, I don't know what, I would put the percentage close to 80%. Yeah. I mean, occasionally there's some jades found in what are described as altars or contexts, but primarily they were probably manufactured in life and designed to be taken into burial. I mean, there are various theories that are floating about how they might have been used in life, and sort of differentiate different strata of society. Like its own with 9 levels, probably has theorized by my colleague in Leon Zhou to refer to generations. And so somebody who had been in power for 9 generations would take a 9-level soul to bury it with him, or her, more often with him. Yeah. Yeah.
Are most of the pieces carved the same on both sides?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I noticed that most of them are shown facing left. Is that's just a? But that's just no reason for that.
Most of these were made for, to be suspended,
I see.
or functionally decorative, or spiritually decorative. And yes, but towards the end of Zhou, you do get some pieces that are not carved on both sides, just one side. But that's usually in the less refined Jade context.
When they're suspended, are they meant to face left?
Yeah. Not clear about that. Left or right.
Towards the heart.
Pardon?
Towards the heart. The left of.
It could be, I don't know, I haven't thought about that. I haven't explored that possibility. But it's certain of the Jades, as written by a colleague of mine and published in the Religions MDPI, believe that the corpse of a body had a lot to do with the position of the Jades in burial, if that makes any sense. Like on the pancreas, they would find a shield like Jade. Don't know about that. Not sure.
Would you comment on your necklace?
Oh, yeah. These are zodiac figures. And this is Shoyan Yu from Liaoning province. It's the real stuff. But it's made today. It doesn't have, I don't think it has too much age. I haven't given it that much thought. But thanks for asking. They're just like little
It
pebbles.
looks so nice.
Thank you. I think so too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw your figures. Yesterday I visited here and I see two exhibit items.
Yeah.
Very, very similar your
Yeah, they
here.
are,
One is the item 19th.
that's it.
I see, like they have double face, human
Oh, yeah.
double human figure. One is big, one is small.
You mean this one?
19.
All the way on the left.
Oh, this one.
Yes, yes. There are some different, because mostly it's a single human face. This is a double human face. One big one, one small one. This is some kind of special meaning. Then I see the double dragon face and double phoenix
Yeah,
over
I'm
here.
not sure really how to interpret
So
that.
total
That's a good
6
question.
years.
Well, maybe there are a lot of these
Yeah.
spirits in the ancestral world.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be. I can't give a factual answer to that.
Ah, yes.
But it's an interesting, and it does appear in
Very, very interesting.
in more than one case.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the one is a big human face, one
Yeah.
is a small human
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
I think maybe symbolize for some special meaning or,
Not that I know, not that I can give offhand, but it's, it's just the multiplicity of powers,
Yeah.
something like that.
Very.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's curious, thank you. Yep.
I hope you don't mind questions. Over the years, I've become aware that there are many more of these jades than I initially thought. And I think many people might agree, when
Oh,
after
yeah.
1989, when all the construction began, so much material came out. And I'm wondering, when I see these diagrams of villages from these times, the artisan area didn't look so huge, but it must have been because.
The workshops?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
because these,
Oh, yeah.
it's so slow to
Oh.
make one of these.
Yeah, people have worked on estimating, but you
Is
know,
it, I mean,
6
could,
months for one little image,
R-
yeah.
could it have been 20% of the population? Was it usually men or women or both?
Both. Men superseded number though. For example, in Yangzhou, men corpses have been more commonly identified than female corpses in the lead tombs surrounding these pyramidal structures. Yeah, there were big jade workshops, and they have been discovered. Jade workshops have been discovered in Linjiatan, and also one at Dingshadi. We published it in 2002, Liangzhu site. They've discovered a workshop, not very well preserved though. And of course, in the Shang period, you have bronze workshops, ceramic workshops, all sorts of workshops, and they're big. And what is going through people's mind who emphasize anthropology and social sciences is who does it identify and what does it say about trade in jade, and who controlled the workshops, as they did in the Han period.
Well, another strange thing is that China exported porcelain much more than jade, I think. You know, like when you visit Europe.
Well,
you
yeah,
s- you
because
see
jade was
these-
never really appreciated in the West. I mean, porcelain was, but jade still doesn't have the recognition that it should in terms of a material, elite material that's prized by cultures in East Asia.
And South America.
Yeah, and what?
And Middle America and South America.
Oh, yeah, and a couple other places. Yeah, like the Philippines and, yeah, a couple other places in the northwest of the United States.
How did you come to be so involved with the study of jade?
That's an interesting
Was
question.
it your
I was trying to fit, no, that's a good question. I was trying to remember what made the Chinese tick. I didn't, and I wanted to know, and I've been studying the Shang period and studied at Taiwan National University, Chinese language and Chinese scripts. And, the Jade Age cultures hadn't been discovered until they were discovered. And then I said, wow, I've got to find the origins of Bronze Age. And so that's why I went into jade, because that's the major material, known from this particular period. It's what I identified as the Jade Age, for obvious reasons. Jade was, like the Bronze Age, was the most exploited material from about, 9,000 years ago till, almost the 4th, 3rd century BCE. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm not getting the feeling of what.
Oh, I went to, because I wanted to find out what these artworks meant. I wanted to find out what they stood for, what they symbolized, how they were representative of Chinese thinking, Chinese ways of thinking in antiquity and in the Bronze Age. I mean, in antiquity. So that's why I went into studying early Chinese scripts, and because the archaeology has produced what we now describe as the Jade Age, because of all the jades in Hongshan, Liangzhu, Longshan, Shujiahe, etc. So that's how I got involved in studying jade, and I put together a couple of,
There are a lot of fields that they are still not being studied. For example,
well, they
I mean,
may.
you are studying something that no one else was doing any research before, and you got very
Well,
keen.
it's a small group of us.
I know, but you are talking about this. The same happens with America, not
Yeah.
North America. All the rest of America, no one was studying it.
No.
So now there are some
Things are opening
people.
up, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We think that everything has been discovered. No.
No, it's outrageous, yeah. Well, I'm
People,
trying to-
it's people, because of their own interest, that they do research and they happen to start to discover things.
Well, because I was studying ancient China, I got a degree in Near Eastern archaeology as well. And I couldn't go and excavate at Al-Kaba, one of the major places in Mesopotamia. But I stopped with the Chinese material just because I wanted to know more about it. And early China, I mean, when things begin, where the language is consistent up to the present day, certain things and extensions and meanings have changed in characters and graphs, but it's the same language that was spoken in 3500 BC as is spoken today. In order to understand how this originated, I went to the early stuff. And you can figure out a lot with oracle divinations. There's a lot going on in those divinations. It tells us about the Shang and their belief systems. Yeah?
In terms of the process, it's a very basic question. What would have been used to carve these jades? Would it have been a harder stone against the jade?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And slowly but surely.
You know, my late colleague in Japan, Hayashi Manao, believed that in the Jade Age they used diamond to abrade jade. And there are others who maintain that argument. I don't think it's far from the truth. I mean, carborundum, corundum are used today, but something, there are stones that are agate that could use. There's some other stones to carve the jade, but you have to have a slurry. You know, there has to be like dust-like and with water, and you have to keep going around and around and around to get a line or a shape made. It's a laborious process.
Elizabeth, in Mesoamerica, they use garnets to.
Well, that's what Hayashi also thought, that they used garnet. But I don't think there's been that much evidence to prove that they use garnet in the Jade Age. But it might come up. Who knows? We don't have a lot of workshop evidence.
In the workshops that they discovered in Mesoamerica, some of the jade was formed and garnets were on top of the jade in natural formation.
Adhering to the jade?
Yeah, in here.
Cool.
Yeah.
So they were part of the original stone?
Yeah. At the top, they were a deposit on.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
And
They may have something like that. I'll look into it. Yeah.
because I think garnets are found in China as well.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it should have some tools or some way to make it more fast, It's just not been discovered, I think.
Not enough workshop areas have to cover, although the theory is that they used these slurries of, what's another stone that I can't think of? It's quartz is what I'm thinking of, yeah, quartz. Yeah, thank you. So they have evidence of quartz. That's well documented. And I think that I think that they're gonna find garnets. I think that's probably gonna happen. Especially when jade was exploited from the northwest in Xinjiang, searching for white translucent jade. I think that a variety of stones were used. No one's really discussed that. Recently there was a lecture by somebody of Qianlong's Jades. I didn't hear it. I don't know who she was, but she gave a talk at Columbia, which I couldn't attend, but she may have the answer. Yeah.
Was much poetry written about Jade?
I have a junior colleague who's working on the very subject for a dissertation at Columbia University, but it's on Western Zhou bronze inscriptions and whether they can be recognized as having poetic license. Western Zhou inscriptions are mostly award inscriptions, rewards to somebody for doing a good deed for the emperor. And his thesis is to identify when sort of poetic license hit the inscriptions of the Western Zhou period. No one's ever done that before. It's an interesting question. Poetry, I'm sure everybody had some sort of poetic, contribution, whether through song or drumming. I mean, musical instruments are very common throughout these periods, particularly drums. And the more jades you wear, the larger you make noise and tingle when they knock against each other.
It makes a nice.
So that it's a different sort of poetry. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.